Hello, this is Tony, and this presentation is for the Management Information Systems class at Loyola Marymount University. This presentation will deal with the benefits and detriments of shorter life cycle cell phones and rapidly increasing technologies. The bulk of the presentation will deal with the waste of these cell phones once discarded. To understand the amount of cell phones, let's understand the cell phone growth as an industry. The first mobile phone was introduced in 1973 by Mr. Martin Cooper. By 1990, 12.4 million users. And by 2009, 4.6 billion users worldwide. And of course, today probably one of the most popular mobile phones out, the iPhone, and its creator, Mr. Steve Jobs. As far as user population of mobile phones, looking in developed nations, in just the last 10 years, you can see a 20% to 97% growth in percentage of inhabitants by population. One of the big advances in moving mobile phones and having them shift in the technology so quickly as far as the hardware goes is the SIM, or the SIM card, the Subscriber Identity Module. It was first introduced in 1991. This card holds the carrier and user information embedded in the data embedded within the card. This eliminates the need to download activation data to a mobile phone. SIM cards can simply be swapped between new and old phones, making the turnover and shorter life cycle easier for the user. Obviously, the large benefit to a shorter life cycle cell phone is all the technology that the new hardware brings. To go over that in a brief concept, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, mobile phones were only used for voice-to-voice calls and were analog. In 1991, the 2G digital cell service came in. This introduced text messaging and mobile email. In 2003, 3G cell service brought broadband internet, GPS directions, and endless networking capabilities, such as networking sites and pretty much anything you can find in an open browser. Currently, one of the new advances is video phone call, video to video, provided in the new iPhone 4, and provided by Sprint and Verizon right now, the new 4G cell service. User life. In just the United States alone, 285 million cell phone subscribers are active. In the U.S., 18 months is the carrier's upgrade time. So a carrier normally provides large incentives or even free phones at the end of 18 months to incentivize the user to re-contract for another 2 years. If you consider an 18-month upgrade and 2.85 million cell users, that is 190 million discarded mobile phones per year just in the U.S. As far as life cycle of the phones, from production, raw materials are manufactured in cell phones purchased and used by the user. At time of disregard or discard of the cell phone and possibly moving up to a new one, the user has two choices: simply throw it away in a landfill or recycle it. From recycling it, some cell phones are refurbished and reused. Some are purely mined for their minerals and taken apart into pieces. One of the great videos is created by Inform.com. It's The Secret Life of Cell Phones. This video is found on YouTube. It's a great showing of how mobile phones are recycled and what the process of recycling, either refurbishing or mining them for minerals. This is merely a clip of the entire video. The video can be found on the link above.
I've just dropped off my old cell phone for recycling, so what happens next? Once the phones arrive at a collection facility here in the U.S., they separate out the chargers and accessories and send those for recycling. The phones are then powered up to be sure they have a good screen, and a test call is placed to make sure they work. Some cosmetic work is done, personal data is removed, and new software is often loaded on to prepare the phone for reuse. Refurbished phones that stay in the U.S. are either sold to smaller carriers or to warranty repair programs. Refurbished phones are also sold to overseas markets, such as Asia and Latin America. Unfortunately, there are some electronics that are shipped out of the U.S. that haven't even been tested. The Basel Action Network, a U.S.-based nonprofit, has documented the dumping of non-working electronics in China and Nigeria.
There's a real moral issue here about shipping phones to these countries that have no infrastructure to deal with them.
Clearly, recycling programs are needed in all countries that receive functional phones for reuse. However, the organization also recognizes that there are responsible recyclers that are committed to upholding high social and environmental standards. The companies that have pledged to uphold these standards set by Basel Action Network are called e-stewards. These companies refuse to make developing countries dumping grounds for our broken down electronics. If they aren't reusable, the phones will be sent to a smelter to recover the metals.
Here at Umicore Precious Metal Refining in Hoboken, Belgium, we are specializing in the recovery of precious metals. And if you're thinking about a cell phone, that is indeed a type of material which has a high intrinsic metal value. If we recycle 1 ton of cell phone, we will recover more than 3.5 kilograms of silver. If you send us 3 metric tons of cell phones, we will have produced this tiny but valuable bar of gold. And if we recycle the cell phones in an environmentally sound way, it also means that we will have to do less mining. And also by doing less mining, the environment will benefit.
The key is to move to a closed-loop pattern of materials use. What you have with cell phones and with a lot of products in our society is that we extract the materials, we make them into products, we use them for a very short period of time, and then we throw them away. If we use them longer, if we take them back and recycle them, we are moving to the closed-loop pattern. Surveys show people want to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think if people knew what it do, then they would definitely recycle.
Certainly, if it doesn't cost them more, and it's relatively convenient, I think you'll find people being very cooperative.
Oh, we would like to recycle our cell phones if we knew how. Yeah.
As seen by the video, one of the great ways to reduce the detriment of short life cycle cell phones is to recycle them and reuse them, and of course less mining and better for the environment. The question comes into play, if it's so good and so wonderful, are there any regulations in play currently to not force but encourage recycling of cell phones? Currently the EU has a great regulations set up, and California and New York have borrowed those regulations and modified them. But other than that, no other U.S. cities or states currently have regulations for recycling of cell phones. A few resources used for this presentation: the secretlife.org for the cell phones. This is Project Inform's video that you saw. They have a bunch of other facts. EPA Waste Partnership. It's a great way to find how and where to recycle your phone, and Recycle My Cell Phone is another great resource to figure out where local places to recycle your phone in your local area. So please, if you have a new cell phone and you're turning it in